What's up, guys? This is Pete, aka Carrothers, and welcome back to the Carrot Poker Podcast. We did not have an episode last week, which was due to me getting sick and not really being able to talk for prolonged periods of time, and by that I mean like more than 2 minutes without coughing my lungs out. So, excuse if there's any spluttering during this video. I'm mostly recovered, but it seems to be one of these kind of colds that just goes on and on forever. Even though it's May in Scotland, so things should be like summery right now. This kind of thing shouldn't be happening, but what can you do? Anyway, in some exciting news, my book is going to be released in Kindle on Sunday, The Grinder's Manual. So if you are aware of the book and are waiting for the Kindle version to emerge so patiently, then your wait is soon to be over. And you can check that out on the Amazon Kindle store by searching for The Grinder's Manual. If you are listening, third time lucky, if you are listening to this podcast after Sunday, the 29th of May, 2016. So yeah, that's good news. Glad to have it finally done. If you're just a listener who is not aware of the Grinder's Manual, it's basically a comprehensive, complete course in No Limit Hold'em Online 6 Max with applications to other forms of No Limit Hold'em as well. And you can check it out. There's a free sample on my website, carrotcorner.com, and a link to purchase a PDF there / The Grinder's Manual, so carrotcorner.com / The Grinder's Manual. Anyway, updates aside, this is another episode of Hands from the Corner. So without any further ado, I want to get into some interesting hands that were posted by my student community over the last few days and see what you guys think of them and give my thoughts on the hand as well, obviously as the coach. So let's pick the first one here, posted by a newer member to the group. This hand was posted this morning at 9:24 AM, so nice and fresh. Don't even know if we don't even have any comments on this hand yet because it's only a couple of hours since it's been posted. So, like I say, excuse the coughing. So the text reads, "Hi group. Okay, I think pre-flop and flop is pretty standard. We open queen from under the gun and get called by a weaker player, which is indeed what happens. Hero is six-handed. He's at 6 max online. Cash table. This is 4 NL, so 2-4. 2 cent, 4 cent blinds, micro stakes. Hero opens to 12 cents, so 3 big blinds. Button calls, and Button is described as some kind of weaker player. He started with 1 big blind less than the starting stack and is 50-27 over 26 hands. So I mean, even just one of those things would tell us that this is almost certainly a fish. Okay, non-full stack is slightly less reliable than being 50-27 over 26 hands, but coupled together, you take the law of combined probability, it would be very, very unlikely for this not to be a fish. So right away, Hero should not make the mistake of saying, well, I only have 26 hands on villain, I don't know anything about him. Hero knows fine well that this is a fish. This is the kind of player Hero wants to get flatted by, so Hero's pretty happy heading into the flop here. So flop comes Jack of Hearts, 6 of Hearts, 2 of Clubs. Hero's out of position, having opened under the gun, heads up to the flop with the fish on the button. Hero bets 21 into 30 with $5 stacks, roughly $4.96 effective. This is obviously pretty good. I mean, your hand wants to bet for value and protection. Hero says, I expect him to call the flop with a lot of hands. Probably any Jack X, 2 hearts hands, gut shots, second pairs. This is good as well. I mean, one thing you also want to avoid when you're doing this kind of analysis is trying to be too specific. I was talking to one of my students the other day about this actually, and he said to me, man, I just don't know how people can put people on hand ranges in game. Like, how can you just put villain on all the combos that he has and know what to do? Well, the answer is that you really can't. You can't put him on a precise range without that range being very narrow and countable in 10 seconds. And having like immaculate reads are just very, very rare in today's online game, or indeed in any game of poker where you can actually put someone on a range combo for combo. So that's not going to happen very often. However, what you can do is that you can spend your out-of-game study time basically just practicing the ability of ranging, and sometimes you want to use in-depth ranges and you want to count combinations, and you want to say, okay, on the Jack 6-2 board, the fish can have 6 combos of pocket 8, 6 combos of pocket 9s, 12 combos of ace jack, etc. But that's not really going to be all that useful to apply in game. Like, there's quite a stretch between doing that and then actually being able to think thoughts in game that allow you to press the right buttons and give you the snappy, quick logic that you need in game to form the correct judgments. So use that kind of analysis to get the kind of lengthy analysis to get familiar with combo counting, to get familiar with what exactly, like, how ranges are weighted and distributed more precisely, and practice using combos in that way to put your opponents on a range, and indeed to form your own ranges when you do your own range building out of game. Probably comes at a slightly later stage in your poker career, but something that should definitely be tackled. And then what you need to really work on is how to make this more approximate, how to translate your ranging ability into an in-game context where you just form judgments, you form like adjective-filled descriptions of your opponent's range that will be succinct to the point and help you make the right decision. For example, a good one here is to say, well, when villain calls pre-flop and he's 50-27, it's very much a terrible idea to go, villain's range is deuce-deuce plus, ace-deuce off plus, king-4 off plus, all suited kings, queen-3 suited plus. It just doesn't make any sense. For one, you're just forming arbitrary boundaries, like where there are none. Like you just don't know where villain's range begins and ends. Like one day he'll call late deuce off if he's feeling tilted. The next, he might have a tighter range of 20% of hands. So you just don't know what that 50-27, as it appears right now, how that's actually manifested in terms of combos. So big mistake to go into too much detail. Let's just say villain's range is wide. It contains lots of stuff, probably all pairs, bunch of ace rag and loads of suited stuff and gappers, connectors, all broadways. Just be vague about it. You don't even need to go into that much detail. Honestly, it's fine just to say villain's range is a big mess of spewy stuff. On to the next street. Good. Don't waste your time going villain's range is these exact combos. Like, you don't know that. Just stop it. Okay, so onto the flop, jack 6-2. He calls our c-bet. What's his range now? Well, you can't narrow it that much. This is a random fish. His range is some floats with like backdoor draws. Sometimes just random 2 cards that decided to call the flop. Gut shots. Like 4-3 suited here. Top pair, second pair, third pair, under pairs in between all of the above. Flush draws. There we go. Lots of stuff. I'm not discounting air. Well, I am discounting air, but I'm not eliminating air from his range. Like a fish can call this flop very, very wide indeed. He can have as little as ace high, king high here, and as much as a set that he's slow playing. So you really can, and everything in between. So his range is completely depolarized, completely just everything, assortments of stuff. So let's not go into too much detail. On the turn, we get the 6 of spades. So the board now reads jack of hearts, 6 of hearts, deuce of clubs, 6 of spades. Sorry about the coughing, guys. Like I said at the start, I really have to start recording because it's just been a bit too long and I don't want to leave you guys hanging. So just something you'll have to tolerate till I'm better. Hopefully next installment I'll be good as new. So 6 of spades turn. And what do we say here? Let's have a look at Hero's analysis. So on the turn, the board pairs, which I believed was strengthening our range more than his. Well, I mean, I'm not really sure I agree with that completely, like strengthening your range more than his. I guess like it's kind of a blank card. It misses both ranges, so you're right in the sense that his draws go down in equity, and so your made hand, having pocket queens on jack 6-2, is going to be, you know, you have more equity against his draws. But at the same time, like some of his 6x, which he has more of than you do, has improved. So that's kind of the bad part, but that's just an insignificant part of his range. It's much easier to have a jack here than it is to have a 6. Because for one, a jack is more combos because it's not blocked as heavily by the board. A hand like ace-jack here is 12 combos. A hand like ace-6 is only 8. And secondly, people play more jack-x than 6x. One fallacy that I allude to in my book called the fish flop fallacy is that fish are likely to flop lots of stuff on low boards, basically, where there are like multiple low cards, and that's just not true, because even though the fish does have hands in his range there that the reg wouldn't, like, okay, this fish will have like 6-3 suited sometimes, and queen 6 suited, and you won't see that with a more solid regular pre-flop, but that doesn't mean that overall that those hands are any kind of significant part of the fish's range. They're not. People still play more high cards and low cards, so the fish is still going to show up with a lot more jack-x, flush draws, pairs than exactly 6x, which is good news for us and certainly means that we should continue to value bet. The board is sufficiently dry here that we should continue to value bet 3 streets out of position. There's not really a reason to do anything else. So Hero says he might also he says, I do think I could have gone slightly bigger. Hero has bet 40 into 72, and I agree. I think in this kind of situation, villain's calling range will be fairly static. Like if he's got nothing and he just called the flop, a lot of those hands will fold now. If he's got any kind of draw or pair, usually he's not going to fold on the 6th turn. So the best sizing to target what we'd call an inelastic range, that's one that doesn't tighten or widen based on hero sizing, the best thing to do there is that when we're value betting specifically, which we usually will be, it's not a great idea to bluff the spot at all. When we're value betting, we want to go ahead and use some bigger sizing. So closer to pot here would be my preference. Okay. On the river, so villain calls the turn, calls the 40 bet. We now have a pot of 1.52, so $1.52, and the river is the 7 of hearts. So flush completes, no other draws really complete on that 7, otherwise it's a blank. Let's look at hero's reasoning first, then I'm going to give my feedback on what hero should do here and on the rest of the hand. So, hero reasons. Okay, here I wasn't sure if I can bet again and get called by many worse hands. Maybe ace-jack will call 3 streets, question mark. Well, firstly, this guy's like a random fish. You're giving him way too much credit for being able to fold anything. Like, why just stop at ace-jack? Like, surely any top pair is likely to call here. Like, okay, some fish will find, like, what is for them a hero fold, and they'll fold top pair on this river, but honestly, this is 5 no limit. The guy has fishy stats. He's probably just a drooler. No offense to the guy, but anyone that runs like that at any stake is likely a drooler, and at 5 no limit, it just makes it more likely that he's a less experienced fish. Because a fish that plays lower will generally be less experienced than a fish that plays higher. And that notion of experience in fish might sound weird, like surely they're all just as bad as each other. Well, no. The ones that play lower will be worse than the ones that play higher, usually, as a pattern, but not always. They'll both be bad, they'll both be making loads of mistakes, but the ones at 5NL will do more catastrophically awful things that you are just like scratching your head at. You just cannot believe that you rub your eyes and say that he really just called all in with king high when I bet 3 streets. So yeah, definitely you're giving him way too much credit to say I don't think I can get called by much worse, maybe ace-jack. Like definitely ace-jack, a lot of the time. And certainly loads of other Jack-X. Remember this guy plays a lot of Jack-X pre-flop due to his VPIP PFR. He's 50-27, so it's very likely that he plays like loads of suited jacks and a lot more off-suit jacks than he should as well. And then, I mean, we've got like some underpairs that can call. I would not be shocked to see like 3rd pair call here. Like as long as you don't size too big here, I think this is a spot where when the flush completes, villain's range probably does become a bit more elastic. Just because fish do think about flushes, they are aware that flushes are in our range, or at least that sometimes they'll be inclined to say, he's made the flush, damn it, I'm going to fold now, or jump to some absurd conclusion like that that's based on nothing. But in any case, I think this, when the texture makes the board wetter, so when like draws complete, things get there, scary big cards come down, fish will generally have more elastic ranges, so they'll be more inclined to fold to bigger sizing, whereas when the turn is blank, like the 6 of spades there on jack 6 deuce, you're just going to see the fish's range not really contract at all, it's just going to stay very constant. So given this, what hero really wants to do here is bet the river, but not bet too big, because basically check folding here is problematic, and so is check calling. Here's why. Check calling is problematic because we undoubtedly put money in worse shape when we let him bet rather than when we bet ourselves, and the reason for that is that villain is very likely to be calling with a jack, like I said, not just ace-jack, but any jack and possibly some underpairs, and maybe even just nothing at all if he's like a real station, which is highly possible given the stakes and his stats. While at the same time, if we check, most fish are quite likely just to see a showdown. You know, the flush got there. Why do they want to inject more money into the pot when they have a hand that can win? They do understand showdown value kind of intuitively, so I will see a fish check back here a good amount of the time, but not always. Now about that, not always. So that's why check calling's bad. We get money in bad shape. So a fish won't always check a worse hand, and that's why check folding's bad, because we have the best hand here the vast majority of the time. Or at least the majority of the time, like jack 6, deuce 6, 7 with a flush completes in the river. We have the queen of hearts as well, by the way, which pretty significantly reduces the amount of combos of flushes that villain can actually have made here. A lot of the combos will be suited queen, suited king, suited aces, that kind of thing. So we definitely take a chunk out of those by having that queen of hearts. It's a lot of combos we block in a fish's range, which is great for us. We do also block queen jack, which is a hand we're trying to get value from, but that's okay. There's so many jack X in his range that it's not as significant a thing. So basically here, I mean, we just don't want to check fold because villain could easily just decide to bet the river, like, oh, he's scared of the flush, I bet. He doesn't have the flush, I'll represent the flush. And sometimes they don't really think about what they've got. They're just like, oh, hey, I bet to represent the flush, or he would have bet with a flush, so I'll bet and get him off the pot. And I mean, I've taught students of this level where they don't understand that the only hands are making villain fold here when they have king jack or worse hands. that they beat by checking anyway. They're closing the action and can just check without facing a bet, so they undoubtedly should check. But fish don't really get that a lot of the time, so you will get people betting worse hands for value if you check here. So if I check queens here, I'm going to check call this river. I'm not happy about it, but I think that, you know, he bets 2/3 pot. I think we're going to have 27-28% equity against his range. But clearly that's a bad way to put money into the pot when we could just bet and get called wider than he would bet himself. So when fish don't have air in their range, like when draws, well, he doesn't have much air here, when draws get there, basically you don't want to check call against fish. You want to either bet fold, which you do here, you want to check fold if your hand can't get any value or is in really bad shape when called. And it's not the case here that queens is in very bad shape when called, not at all. One other thing could be that we could bet here even if we can't value bet. Now the definition I use in the Grinder's Manual for a value bet is a bet that when it is called, hero has more than 50% equity against villain's calling range. I think that's quite a good definition. This was questioned on my 2+2 thread where the Grinder's Manual was being discussed, and I think some people said that it didn't fall in line with what their definition of a value bet would be, but I found that definition too broad. It was just a bet that was plus EV, basically. I think a value bet is one that you're ahead when it gets called, that you have enough equity that you're going to be profiting when villain calls you in that branch, not losing money. So here, this may not be the, well, I think this is the case here. I think we are plus 50% when called on the river, so it's a clear bet. But even if we weren't, even if we only had 40% equity, betting can still be the best line out position. And that's something that's a little counterintuitive to people, especially those that use the same definition as I do of a value bet. Well, this isn't a value bet, but it's the most plus EV line. And the reason for that is that, well, when you check and face a bet, you might have like 20% equity or 30% equity against that bet, and you have to call due to pot odds because villain made it 2/3 pot, leaving you a target of 28%. So you have to check call a 2/3 pot size bet, and you have 30% equity. Whereas if you make a 2/3 pot size bet, you might have 40% equity. And if you check fold, well, that's worse than both of those options. So you can see there that betting, bet folding, presumably, is the highest EV line, even if it's not a value bet, even if you're not plus 50% equity when called. So clear bet here, big mistake I think to do anything else. So hero reasons, I'll just try and correct some of hero's reasoning because hero ended up checking this river and then folding to a 2/3 pot size bet, which I think is probably the worst thing you can do. I think you have to call after you check, but you should never check in the first place and put yourself in that position. So hero says, if we check, because he's obviously not ruled out betting, he acknowledges that betting is a viable alternative here. He probably checks down weaker jacks, right, which is exactly why you want to bet. And if he comes to the river with second pairs, he would probably check them too. Question mark. Yes, probably. Again, we don't know. There's a margin for error in that probably, as there is in all probablys. Villain is likely going to be betting those second pairs for no reason or some weird fishy reasoning some of the time, turning them into bluffs. So for that reason, you will get money into the pot against those hands more often by betting, but you will still sometimes get money into the pot by checking, but not enough to make checking better than betting. Okay. He then asks, he will bet his flushes and maybe some bluffs. Well, there aren't that many bluffs here, but yes, he will bet some random stuff, like ace high that randomly got here, gut shots. Yeah, there are a few bluffs, but not enough. If draws had bricked here, I think check call would be way more viable. I would still bet, because I just think there's way too much like worse jack X and stuff to get value from. But you can fathom some situations where your hand is not super strong for value betting, but there are plenty of misdraws that villain won't call your bet with, but will bet himself if you check, and therefore you should check call. But this is obviously not one of those spots with the flush getting there in the river. There just aren't really enough bluffs. Hero also says, but does he have many bluffs here? No, correctly identified. If he was drawing for the flush and he got there. Not necessarily, but mostly there are hands like 4-5, 3-4 that are draws as well. Like sometimes fish are really stationary with just like two overcards like King Queen, but there aren't that many. He's also not aggressive, so I don't expect him to bluff here. Red flag here because I have no idea what that's based on, because we only have 26 hands in villain. His AF is 0.8, but that is meaningless. It means absolutely nothing over this sample. Like, it's such a tiny sample to use aggression factor. And also, like, he's called so much pre-flop that obviously, I mean, when you play 50% of hands, your AF is going to be lower. You're going to be checking to the pre-flop raiser a lot because you're going to be calling without the initiative. So an AF of 0.8 over that sample is nothing you can read into, and it's a big mistake to interpret that as something meaningful. So I would just say be very careful with that to hero. He also says he might also bet his 6x hands. Well, yeah, I mean, he's going to bet trips, I would think. For sure, I would agree with that. And he's fishy, he can have more combos than normal. Sure, he can, but then he can also have more jacks, so you need to figure that into the equation as well for betting. Obviously, when you check, that makes check calling kind of dubious, but I think it's still better. Can he bet for value with a worse hand? Maybe he bets his ace-jack here. Yeah, possibly. Certainly not 100% of the time, but yeah. I think villain can bet ace-jack, he can bet king-jack. He could even just decide that his top pair is good. Like, my hand's good now because he doesn't have the flush, so I bet. You know, these thought processes are all quite typical of fish. So he said, I felt in game that folding overpair here felt pretty weak. I hate this word. This weak is just like, I just want to eliminate this from the poker vocabulary for the whole world, because every time someone uses this word weak, they are talking about nothing. They are literally just opening their mouth and sound is coming out that means nothing. And let me elaborate on that. This might not be the case here, because this player, I think, is actually quite competent, who's posted this hand, and by weak, he may mean that the fold is bad. Like, it could just be, you know, that he should have called because he had enough equity, which is fair enough. But if by weak you just mean looks weak, appears weak, you know, have a sense that you're being bullied or something like that, like, weak means nothing. Like, was this weak? Like, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter whether you want to apply the word weak to a fold. If the fold was good exploitatively or as part of a balanced strategy, then you should make that fold. I don't care what it looks like. You have a range, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, I've seen people post hands before where they've got like the bottom of their opening range. They got 3-bet twice and they're like, I can't fold because it's weak. It means nothing. It's just noise. It's just like me giving a reason for something in life and using a word that doesn't exist in English. Just like weak shouldn't exist in the poker vocabulary. It's like you saying to me, well, what time did you get out of bed today? And me being like, well, I slept in because of blah, blah, blah. And you being like, wait, what? What's that word? And me being like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's a real reason to not get out of bed. So, yeah, I've ranted enough about that. I hate that word. Never say weak to me in a coaching session because I'll like start shouting at you probably. So, anyway, the upshot here is that folding overpair, I mean, it is bad. I don't know if it's weak. It's bad, certainly, because we only need 28% equity to call. I think we're going to reach that target against a random fish just about, but we've missed the best line, which is betting in the first place and getting money in with even more equity than that. So this is a very instructive spot, very interesting hand, well posted, good, well thought out, you know, good structured thoughts all the way through. It's allowed me, because the student has given so many thoughts and so many questions, it's allowed me to teach him loads more than just what this hand history would teach him alone. If he just posted this hand, you know, I could be like, well, you should do this, this, and this, but I wouldn't know where his reasoning goes wrong. I wouldn't know that he's vastly underestimating how wide the average villain will call the river here. I wouldn't know that he's not comparing his equity when he bets to his equity when he checks. He's comparing what to do after checking just based on whether he can value bet. But remember that value betting is not a necessary requirement for betting the river out of position. It being the best line is a necessary and sufficient requirement for betting the river out of position. So we know where villain's gone wrong in his thought process. We've kind of busted the thought process leaks in that hand, and I think that the next time a hand is played of this nature by this hero, he'll play it a lot better and he'll have a better idea of where to go. Okay, I'm going to just keep it to one hand for today. Hopefully that was very instructive. I've been going for about 24 minutes and my voice is, as you can hear, a bit shaky today. My voice is weak today. I'll use the word weak to refer to my podcast making abilities this morning. Definitely that's a good application of the word weak. Don't use it in poker. If you take one thing from today, then always have EV-centered reasons for doing things. Don't throw around arbitrary terms and expect them to guide you because they're meaningless. It's like getting out of bed for Blamsham in the morning. That's not a word. I don't know what you mean. Same thing. Language of EV. That is the language of, in poker, the language of EV. Just like in our world, there are languages like Urdu and English and Spanish. So speak one of them or no one will understand what you're saying. In poker, speak EV because everyone speaks it. Okay guys, if you want more from me, you can check out my website, carrotcorner.com/The Grinder's Manual for stuff on book, /coaching packages for info on coaching. If you have any questions or you'd like to work with me privately on your game, I'm still offering coaching packages, still taking on students. Admin@Carrot Corner is my email address. And yeah, you can check out the testimonials on my website and everything there if you want a bit more information about my coaching results and credentials and that kind of thing. So Sunday, Grinder's Manual should be out on Kindle. Stay tuned for it. Pick yourself up a copy, read it on the train or whatever. I guarantee you it is the textbook that will that will make you, as someone who understands poker, to a decent level if you're not already there. And even if you are already there, it will help you understand things, give you thought processes, give you ways of thinking that you've never thought about before, that will help you understand spots. I think it's a definitive text these days to No Limit Hold'em online 6-max. Even if I do say so myself, I highly recommend checking it out. There's a sample on my website as well. Anyway, promotion aside, coughing aside, hand history analysis aside, see you next time for more Hands from the Corner or something similar, and good luck at the tables. Run good. Cheers, guys.